Winston Churchill has been accused by some, like journalist Madhushree Mukherjee, of deliberately starving 4 million Bengalis to death during the 1943 Bengal famine. This accusation stems from the claim that Churchill refused to divert food aid shipments bound for Europe to relieve the famine in Bengal. However, the evidence shows Churchill believed there was no shortage of food in Bengal based on the information he received. The Nobel laureate Amartya Sen agreed there was no shortage compared to previous years, but a distribution problem caused by war constraints and local mismanagement. The elected provincial government of Bengal and the British Viceroy's government in Delhi were initially slow to respond, believing food supplies were adequate despite rising prices. The imperial administration had also transferred significant powers to the provincial government as part of India's gradual transition to self-rule. Once the severity of the famine became clear, the British Viceroy intervened under emergency powers to assume control of relief efforts. Churchill actually replaced the ineffective Viceroy Lord Linlithgow with the more capable Field Marshal Archibald Wavell, specifically citing his experience with famine relief. The record provides extensive evidence that large food aid shipments were organized by the British government to relieve the Bengal famine. In August 1943, upon first hearing of the famine's extent, Churchill's war cabinet arranged 150,000 tons of barley and wheat from Iraq and Australia be shipped to Bengal. Churchill himself insisted another 250,000 tons be sent over 4 months. In October 1943, Churchill directed new Viceroy Wavell to make famine relief a top priority. He wrote to Wavell that shipping should be diverted from war needs to deal with shortages. In January 1944, totals of 130,000 tons barley from Iraq, 80,000 tons wheat from Australia, and 10,000 tons from Canada had reached Bengal. In February, Churchill called an emergency cabinet meeting, saying he would help all he can to send more aid. But the UK's ally America declined to provide ships, citing needs for D-Day. By end of 1944, 1 million ton of grain had reached Bengal from Australia, Iraq, Canada and other allies, despite strict British rationing and urgent needs in liberated Italy and Greece. This directly refutes the claim made by Mukherjee that Churchill callously blocked food from reaching Bengal. Aid was limited by extreme shipping shortages, but huge efforts were made to send grain. Churchill's own shifting views on India and Indians throughout his career provide balanced context. He undeniably made racist, derogatory remarks, particularly about Bengalis during the famine. However, he also frequently praised the courage of Indian soldiers, and his views moderate over time. Examples provided. In war memoirs, Churchill praised the unsurpassed bravery of Indian troops, saying they shine forever in war's annals. He noted 2.5 million Indians volunteered to serve. In 1942, he proposed offering India full dominion status like Canada or Australia after the war, in return for full support against the Axis. This belies accusations of innate hostility to Indian independence. His abusive outbursts in 1942-43 criticizing Indians were reactions to Gandhi's Quit India movement, which Churchill saw as an appeasement of Japan and betrayal of the war effort. Similarly, his harsh words on Bengalis were colored by some Bengali leaders allying with the Japanese. In 1944, Churchill affirmed to an Indian politician his belief that the notion the Indian was inferior must disappear. He spoke of wanting a great shining India the British could admire like Canada or Australia. Churchill took pride in the rapid population growth of Indians under British rule, contrasting it with the fate of Native Americans. This seems incompatible with desiring the genocide of Indians through starvation. In summary, Churchill's racist attitudes were sadly common for his era, but mellowed over time. His outrage in 1942-43 needs contextual understanding, and he clearly desired to maintain India as a proud, thriving part of the British Empire, not extermination of its people. His words on, and record with, India appear complex rather than unambiguously hostile. In conclusion, the accusation that Winston Churchill holds sole responsibility for genocidal willful neglect during the Bengal famine is not substantiated when objectively examining Britain's relief efforts, Churchill's own evolving views, and the nuanced, complex reality of how the crisis unfolded on the ground in India. The famine represented a failure of response, not conscience. Churchill's racial blinkers led him to initially underestimate the famine, but not to perpetrate or ignore human-caused mass starvation of the Indian people.